Komið þið sæl, góðan dag. Verið öll hjartanlega velkomin á þennan fund með Barbara Stewart. Við erum algjörlega í skýjan með frábæri mætingu í dag. Þessi fundur haldinn af NASDAQ OMX Iceland, VÍB, FKA og Naskar Investments. Fyrirkomulag, svona áður en að við byrjum þetta, þá ætla ég aðeins að útskýra fyrirkomulagi. Ég heiti Kristín Jóhannsdóttir og ég samskiptastjóri hjá NASDAQ OMX á Íslandi. Og fundarstjóri hérna í dag verður Björn Berg Gunnarsson, hann ætlar að stýra panel á eftir. Og í panel sitja Barbara Stewart sem aðalræðumaður, Kolbrún Jónsdóttir, framkvæmdastjóri hjá Kjölfestu, Þórdís Lóa Þórhallsdóttir, formaður FKA og stjórnarformaður Naskar Investments, Birna Einarsdóttir, bankastjóri Íslandsbanka og Páll Harðarson, forstjóri NASDAQ OMX á Íslandi. Ég ætla að byrja að segja hérna nokkur orð áður en að Barbara Stewart kemur hérna upp. Og síðan eftir að Barbara hefur lokið sinni máli, þá mun panelin koma hérna upp á eftir og þið getið beint öllum spurningum til þeirra sem þið hafið. Það mun ganga hérna hljóðnemi salinu eftir, þannig að endilega spyrjið Barbara spurninga eða panelin. Já, áður en að Barbara kemur upp þá ætla ég að flytja hérna nokkur orð tilurð þessa fundar og ég ætla að fá að gera það á ensku af kurteisi við okkar gest. Early in the spring last year, we at NASDAQ OMX Iceland, along with VÍB, Wealth Management Division of Íslandsbanki, Association of Businesswomen in Iceland, and Naskar Investments, kicked off our co-operational project called Diversity on the Market. The idea for the project sprung from the results of a survey we came across in Viðskiptaþróunar on the difference of attitude between women and men towards the equity market. In that survey, only 4% of women versus 17% of men were interested in looking at investing on the market in the year to come. Now, in the light of everything, this may not have been the biggest surprise. However, we felt it worrying and wanted to explore this a bit more. So, in cooperation with the Association of Businesswomen in Iceland, we sent out our own survey among its members and Reykjavík University students and held a roundtable discussion. The project Diversity on the Market was the offspring of that work, and increased education became the focus. VÍB Wealth Management then led a series of 10 different and well-sought seminars throughout the year, open for everyone about the stock market, how you should start if you wanted to invest, and what you should watch out for. Last month, we sent another survey among the same set of women. In short, around 44% of women said their interest in investing in the market had increased from last year, and 50% of them said they understood more about investing from last year. The percentage of women shareholders in listed companies has not noticeably increased, though. It is good to tread with care, and more knowledge may, of course, lead to the result of not investing at all. Often when particular campaigns are launched, they have the tendency to change, and this project was no different in that respect. We saw that young people were extremely interested in understanding the market better, both men and women, and a new association, the Association of Young Investors, sprung from this interest. But why are we doing this, and why are we focusing on women? We have at some point been criticized for saying that the public should take a look at the market as a part of their saving schemes, and we have also been criticized for targeting women specially. It is clear that Icelanders experienced a financial and ethical collapse, so why should the general public even consider investing on the market? The fact is that they must answer that for themselves, and the market must prove itself for them. And somewhere we must begin and somehow rebuild to gain health. Investing on the market is risky in its nature, and one should not invest without understanding how it works or the risks involved. That is why we kicked off our educational project to increase awareness and contribute to increased financial literacy, both among women and men. And on the women part, we believe that homogeneity is not a desirable thing, and that a good diversity of investors is necessary for a healthy exchange of opinions on the market. In other words, we think it would be better if the percentage gap among women and men investors would be less or none. Just this week I was watching the evening news where a new campaign to increase the number of women in IT sector was being introduced. I believe it was the CCP who was leading that. The interviewee said it would create more diversity. And there you go. We are seeking more diversity and balance between men and women in many fields, being it in the IT business or the financial or elsewhere. It has been discovered that women approach investments differently than men, a topic we want to explore today. That is why we have invited Ms. Barbara Stewart, a chartered financial analyst, partner and portfolio manager at Cumberland Private Wealth Management in Toronto, Canada, here today. Besides Barbara's day-to-day work as a portfolio manager, she is a researcher and writer on issues around women and financial literacy. She published her 4th white paper in a rich thinking series on International Women's Day, How Smart Women Invest. Please welcome Barbara Stewart to the podium.
Hello, everybody. It's so exciting to see this type of a crowd. I want you to know that I speak a lot around the world, and Reykjavík seems to me to be an incredibly progressive country on this topic, and it's just my pleasure to be here. And thank you so much to Kidda and to Paul for this opportunity today. I followed my heart to do this research, and I'll speak a bit about that this morning in the next half an hour. I do have a regular job. In fact, my husband knows that this morning I woke up to get this email from one of my clients complaining about something to do with taxes. And I went into this tizzy of, I've got to reply to this email because I want to be good at my day job. But then he pointed out that by the time the client got my answer, it would be 6 hours later. So I think I have time to do this presentation. But it's completely my passion, which you'll hopefully feel today, and I think that this is such an incredibly important topic. I also need you to know before I start with the sort of theoretical part of the research that this isn't my opinion, and I think that is important to point out. I did this research, it's interviewing women all around the world, hundreds of women around the world over the last 4 years, and I'm going to try and summarize what those women have taught me over the years. So this isn't so much my message, although I'm probably one of those smart women. This is my way of channeling, if you will, the messages from all the smart women I've talked to around the world. It's a tough job, but I'm going to give you the essence of what they told me over the last 4 years. And thank you again. So, everything I've learned about women and money in the next half an hour. The reason I started doing the research in the first place was I was living through and working through the financial crisis in 2008-09, so I'm very familiar with how you might have felt and possibly still feel here. And I started doing some reading on women and money because I was feeling that I was losing the meaning of my own job and the value that I had with my clients. It was difficult to feel important anymore, and all of the studying I'd done and everything, it just felt like, what's the point of any of this? No one trusts the market. Maybe they don't even trust me. So as I was reading research on women and money, which had become an interest, it occurred to me after many articles from banks and from research institutes around the world that I would say all of the messages were negative. Everything I read, it seemed that they were saying women were not confident, or women didn't take risks investing, or they deferred their authority to other people, or they just weren't very good at investing. And I thought, this is really strange because I work in a day-to-day practice with lots of female clients. And I have to say, I had not had that experience. My female clients, and I've been in the business over 20 years now, they're very strong and they're very capable and they make investment decisions. So I felt, what a huge disconnect between what I'm reading about women and money and what I'm experiencing in my client base. Why don't I look at that? And I thought, okay, I have a chartered financial analyst designation. Usually that's about stock analysis, but I do know how to do analysis. So I thought, I'm going to do my own research in my spare time. And that spare time is now 4 years later, and I'm really tired, but I'm really energized as well because there's some very important stuff that has come out of the last 4 years. I'm going to read this quote. Behavior determines financial outcomes, regardless of socioeconomic status or knowledge level. So what does that mean? This is kind of the crux of what I'm talking about. If we look at what women are doing with their money, rather than what they're saying they do with their money, that could be very important. For example, if you ask a woman, are you confident? And I've done this all around the world. You'll usually, no matter what their job is, you'll usually get an answer, well, I should know more about my money, or I'm not really very confident. But if you look at what they do with their money, that'll tell you all they need to know. So, for example, I met with this woman who runs one of the largest biotech practices in a law firm in Canada, and she told me that she has a Harvard degree in economics and finance, but she doesn't feel confident managing her own money. She just doesn't know enough. Yet she spends all day negotiating multi-million-dollar practices, and she's probably in the top 1% of women in the world in terms of being capable in financial behavior. So what does that tell you? So from there, in 2010, I commissioned a survey of 1,000 women across Canada, and not unlike the one that Kit had talked about today, the findings were slightly controversial in that the majority of Canadian women were making most of the big financial decisions in the household. They buy and sell homes, they sell cottages, they negotiate home renovations, and the sale of family businesses. But the most important finding in that survey for me was when they were asked the question, how did you learn about money growing up? Only 15% had taken advice from the financial industry. Only 11% said they had formal instruction from textbooks or courses, but a huge percentage of women, 73%, said they had learned about money through either real-life lessons or from other people who were role models. For me, that was worth exploring further. So the next year, I interviewed 50 accomplished women around the world to find out how did they learn about money when they were growing up. And it occurred to me that if they had positive messages, maybe instead of those negative messages, we could pass along messages from successful women who were doing well with money. And if those messages they learned growing up had helped them feel more confident and secure, why not pass them along? Why not share this information that is working? And 10 common themes emerged, and this is really the secret to success in dealing with money from these women and their role models. And the theme that permeated throughout, of course, was to be independent. And so messages when you're young for our daughters, work hard, earn your own money, get a feel for handling money. This will make you financial independence. So, for example, a woman I met with in Zurich a couple of years ago, she's a very accomplished architect, wins awards all over the place. And she said, you know, her message growing up was a very simple one, but it stuck with her for an entire life. And often these messages are very simple. When she was a teenager, she was going on a summer holiday, and her parents gave her some money. And they said, here's the amount of money you have for the summer. Be careful with it. And she was so excited to have this money in her hands. She decided she'd go to movies. She bought little gifts for all her friends, and she liked to eat at Burger King, and it was so fun for her to spend all of her own money. But the problem was, in the first few days, she spent so much that she had a sudden realization that, uh-oh, if I keep spending at this rate, my money might run out. So that lesson actually stayed with her. She kind of had to be frugal for the rest of the trip. But it was that getting a feel, the feeling of money, feel for spending and saving, that's what she's passed along to her own daughters as well. So the next year, with this knowledge, I decided, well, what's happening today, I wonder, with smart and successful women? What are they doing with their money now that they're older? And so I interviewed a different group of women, and I only asked them this one question, and I'd like you to reflect on this question for yourself right here before we go through it. The question is, at this time in your life, how are you investing your time, your energy, or your money? And what are you most passionate about, and why? I'll give you a second. So the statistics out of that question, with 100 women around the world, showed that real estate was the dominant investment. But the more interesting finding was that at least half of the women that I talked to said they're spending some portion of their potential retirement funds on what matters to them now, today, rather than waiting until they retire, and rather than investing in traditional asset classes such as the equity market. In fact, 25% of women said that they're investing a sizable portion of their entire net worth in a business of their own, a business that's aligned with their personal causes, something that they're passionate about. And these personal causes could be just about their family, it could be about saving the world somehow, or even saving their soul in some way. But lots of women, as you know, are multitaskers, and they could be financing more than one cause at the same time. But the point of this research was that we know women were not doing as much as we thought they possibly should be in traditional equity markets. So a perfect example is Pia Anderberg. Some of you may have heard of her or met her. She's in Stockholm. She's what I'd call a serial entrepreneur. And she told me that she's passionate about her business and her family and traveling. So she tries to do everything at the same time. She takes her 14-year-old son to the gym, so they do workouts together. She discusses business strategy with her husband because he's her mentor. And she gets her best business ideas while she's traveling on vacation with her family. But the number one reason she became an entrepreneur was the word freedom. And that freedom is to decide how to run her own life and how to spend her own money and what to do in her own business. So she combines them all. And in the fourth study, I decided, okay, here I go again, more women around the world. I want to understand why are so few women investing in stocks. So I, again, just had one question. And my one question last year was, how did you get started investing in the stock market? But soon I had to change my question because 9 times out of 10, women would answer about investing in something other than stocks. Even though I'd asked them, how did you get started investing in stocks? They'd start talking about real estate or art or wine, or even one lady talked about investing in antique violins. So I thought, okay, this explains a lot right up front, that when women think about investing, they're thinking about investing in a much broader way than just investing in the stock market. So I changed my question, and my question became, how did you get started investing? And the research I just released on March 8th, International Women's Day, as Kida said, and there are 50 quotes inside this. You can download this on my website. Really inspiring, about advice and ideas and stories about how to get started investing. I'll give you the 4 sort of themes that are out in that report. One, why should I start investing in the first place? A lot of women talked about that. Before they did anything, they had to decide what kind of an outcome do they want. Are they making an investment to support innovation or entrepreneurship? Or are they funding a cause, or are they just investing to build financial confidence? All kinds of reasons, but first start out with, why am I doing this? And that was important. And then other smart women said they had to decide what was it they were going to invest in. And most of them had to, it came into 2 categories. Either they wanted to invest in something they understood very, very well, like Warren Buffett, I think, never wanted to invest in the tech stocks. Same with women. They want to understand what it is they're putting their money in. Or it had to be something that they were extremely interested in. So interested or understand or both. And the third category was, would you invest on your own or use a financial advisor? And how did they make that decision? And there's lots of stories about that. But it also was linked to whether they're interested or not. So if you're very honest with yourself, instead of saying, I should invest, maybe you don't want to invest. You don't have to, but either way you have to take some action because you accumulate money over the years. And if you're not interested, then the action is to hire somebody that you trust to do the investing on your behalf. And then practical advice. Women are full of practical advice, and this goes back to those stories and learning from their role models. And you can read this practical advice in there, but a lot of it had to do with that getting a feel for money theme, and online investing is just so perfect for that reason, because it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man or whatever you are, you can just go online. Money doesn't really know who you are, and it's a really nice feeling. So an example of how will I know what to invest in, this lady's from Copenhagen, Trish Bank, and she's in the pharmaceutical industry. And she told me her story about getting started. When she was in her late 20s, she had to move cities for a job, and she was having all kinds of troubles, but one of her colleagues, who was a doctor, was really impressed with her determination and the fact that she moved cities to get this job. And so Trine decided to trust her instincts and confide in this woman. She thought this woman could be a role model, but she sought her out and she asked her, and she said, you know, I need some help. I've got some financial issues and I need some help getting started on dealing with them. And this doctor kindly took her to the bank, set up an online account for her, showed her how to buy and how to sell stocks, and they discussed it. They made it fun. What should she buy and why? They talked about their own industry, all of the various companies. And many years later, they're still very good friends, and they get together and discuss these investment ideas together. So sometimes, and I tell this to younger women, and there's lots of younger women here today, which is great, sometimes you have to find your own role model. It could be just someone you look at and think, I mean, I remember myself being about 20 in an elevator once, and I saw this woman in my building where I worked who had this beautiful suit on, and she just looked really put together. And one day, after months of watching her, I actually ended up asking her, where do you work? Because I wanted to know where she bought her clothes, but we ended up having coffee, and I ended up working in the same company. But, you know, if I hadn't had the courage, I was very shy, believe it or not, back then. If I hadn't had the courage to ask her those questions, I probably wouldn't have ever got that job, right? So, so to summarize 4 years, and then we'll go on after this, addressing a few other questions. The 4 big themes I've learned: actions speak louder than words when it comes to women, so don't really listen to what they say so much, because we can be a little bit self-deprecating. So look at what we're doing if you want to get inspired. Women also learn about money through stories or through life lessons from role models. Women invest in causes or concerns that matter to them. We want to make a difference. And smart women get investing by practicing, getting a feel for money, going online, opening up accounts, buying and selling stocks. Really smart women take action, and they take action one way or another, but they explore what's right for them first. And in doing this research, this is the thing that has become the most clear to me, and it goes back to why I started doing the research in the first place. Women are not risk averse. Women are risk aware. So I would like to change the lingo. If there's anything I accomplish, I'd like to do this. When it comes to investing in anything, whether it's family, whether it's career, whether it's our home, women do their homework and they take calculated risks. So I spoke at a really big financial literacy conference last May in Istanbul, and I was on a panel like this. And one man who is a financial expert in New York was on the panel, and he was just chatting about whatever, and he said, yes, and women are risk averse and la da 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 da. And I decided, okay, I'm here for a reason. I had to say, excuse me, but where did you get this information that women are risk averse? And this man stopped in his tracks, and he started going, and it was really embarrassing because he was sitting on a panel, and he was like, and that really said it all. He kind of muttered, well, I read some studies. And I just left it. I said nothing, and it was like the room was just silent. And I think that was one of the best things I've ever done. So, before I came here, we had a planning phone call, and Paul asked me a couple of questions about that I might want to address, and so I'm going to talk to them briefly. One is, why should women invest? Why is it good for women to invest in the stock market? Good question. Well, when you do a Google search for passion investments, because this is what I'm talking about, women want to follow their passion, this is what comes up in Google. And it's really toys for boys, like wine, baseball cards, cars. But women mean something different when they talk about passion investing. They want to invest in companies whose products they use and whose values are aligned with their own. And so investing in their personal causes, women can actually change the world. We know this. And so getting women to invest in the stock market gives them this superpower to influence what happens inside the companies they're investing in. And I mean, it also bears mentioning, of course, I'm a chartered financial analyst, I have to put up this chart. Equities are the best performing asset class over time. Everybody knows that. So women really can't afford to ignore that fact. And we need the money that we're going to earn from investing. We really do, because we'll spend 20 years at the end of our lives probably alone. Everybody knows that too, for one reason or another. So we need the money, and we also need the money management skills, because the skills themselves will lead to making money, but it also, maybe more importantly, leads to financial confidence, which we need. And so back to the research about how women learn from role models, women who invest in equity markets are going to be able to teach their daughters to invest in equity markets. And I can't think of a better example than actually doing it yourself. So another question that was asked was, well, why women investing, why is that good for the market in general? Why is it good for stock markets and for companies? And let's think about this. If we have way more female shareholders inside every company, then it's going to be much more likely that they will vote in favor of having more women on boards. So we have all of this work that we've been doing around the world on trying to get more women on boards, but maybe simultaneously, a faster, perhaps, an easier way to do that would be to get more women shareholders investing in companies, and then they'll change the board. So that's an example of how power can be used for good. More female shareholders combined with more board diversity, and this will lead to better managed companies and companies that outperform. So a more diverse shareholder base also reduces the volatility of the general stock market. So the stock market will be a smoother ride, which probably everyone would appreciate, and that also leads to better long-term performance. So the other thing is women are longer-term investors. I've never had a female client ask me why a company missed on their earnings by 1 penny or 2 pennies. And most male clients don't ask me about that either, but some of them do. And I think ignoring quarterly results, or at least not obsessing about quarterly results, will allow companies to stay focused on what they're good at and on building shareholder value over the long term. And finally, why women investing in stocks? Why is that good for financial institutions in general, like the banks or even NASDAQ? Because, let's face it, women are the untapped market. Getting women to invest in stocks is a huge opportunity for financial institutions globally. And the smart financial institutions can gain big market share, and whoever goes first is really going to own the space. And this concept says it all. I mean, the territory is still wide open. Whoever takes advantage of the opportunity is going to have the wind at their back, and the rewards are going to be huge to tap into the female market. We also know, looking here today, for example, women share on social media. And whether it's getting a woman to attend an event like this, or whether women are combining together to help the community solve a problem, women are huge users of social media. And if you can get women to invest, they will become your viral marketing department. Now, here's my favorite slide in the whole thing. By the way, my husband Duncan is here, and he does the slides, and they're really good. So thank you, Duncan. What are the implications of all of this research? What do we do with this information? How can we better serve female investors? Right now, I have this favorite psychoanalyst named Carl Jung. Anybody that knows me knows I spent 10 years reading his stuff. And he has this famous phrase called holding the tension of the opposites. So I love this slide because if we look at what exists right now, on one hand, we've got feminine ideals, ideals of following our values and our hearts and all of that. And on the other hand, we've got the existing structure of the financial industry. So this is a tension. Now, Carl Jung said, if you have a tension like this, what you're supposed to do is hold the tension of these opposites. And if you hold that tension for long enough, a third possibility will appear. So my perspective is that we're right there right now, and this tension's about to break. And how it will break is we will start to have a third possibility, which will be integrating the feminine ideals and values and feminine language into the existing or traditional structure. And we don't know what that looks like yet, but we're about to see. And I have to use Gloria Steinem. Don't think about making the world fit women. Sorry, don't think about making women fit the world. Think about making the world fit women. So exactly how complicated is this when it comes to women in investing? It really doesn't have to be. And again, it comes back to behavior. So let's look at women and what are they actually doing with their money, how are they investing, and work backwards from there. We have to make it normal for a woman to invest, and I'll explain this slide. There was a time when there were very few women in orchestras, especially trombone players for some reason. It was considered unladylike. And by holding blind auditions, female representation in orchestras jumped from 14% up to 40% very, very quickly. So, of course, women are going to feel uneasy if they're underrepresented. If they're underrepresented in an orchestra, underrepresented in a workplace, or underrepresented in a stock exchange or a stock market. But as membership grows and they get better support networks, then they have a sense of normality. So now when you see images of modern orchestras, they have equal representation of both sexes. So we have to make it normal for women to buy stocks. It just has to be normal. So when attempting to communicate with female investors, female clients, potential clients, we need to use real stories. We can use case studies, we can use anecdotes, even documentaries, discussion groups, even the quotes that I've put together in my research work. We could bring those quotes to life and have the women talking about them. We've got to change how we talk to women so that we're talking in their language, and link stock ideas with women's personal values so they see the reason to invest in the business. And also help them get started, getting a feel for money and getting a feel for investing. Wouldn't it be great if we had analyst research reports that instead of being full of price-earning ratios and all kinds of detailed information that probably no one really understands, wouldn't it be great if we told a story about what the company did? I can't tell you in my industry how often even the people with CFA designations, we look at each other after reading an analyst report and go, what does the company do? It's ridiculous. Got to tell the story. So the other thing, if we make it meaningful for women, they're going to invest and they're going to be the most loyal investors. In my view, my female clients, God bless them, they hang around for years and years and years. And I've got lots of men that do too, and I love men, believe me, and I deal with both men and women. I just think that, again, anybody that wants to make money can make money off women and for women. So who will lead the future of women in investing? I think that for the financial industry to do this properly, we've got to borrow skills from other experts outside the industry, experts in marketing, experts in data mining, and experts in social media. I'm going to close by giving you a few predictions about women in investing for 2015. And this will be the subject of my research this year. I'm going around the world again, talking to people who are leading initiatives, because we are on the cusp of a global transformation, and I want to know who's doing what with women and money, and where are we headed? And so I've got a glimpse just from talking to a few people in the last couple of months, so I'll share this with you. And the future will not be about putting pink covers on mutual fund reports. I'll tell you that. Crowdfunding, we're seeing an increase in crowdfunding ventures. Women can participate and allocate their money to startups and products that they believe in. And female entrepreneurs can use crowdfunding as a source of capital. So watch that. Here's a cool one. MOOCs, massive open online courses. Get the best professors from the best universities around the world and make the course available online for free. This concept can be a game changer. Recently, there was an introduction to Linux software investing classes in the form of a MOOC, and they had over 2,500 people sign up in the first 24 hours of it being posted. We know that women love to learn online, so why not learn online from the best professors around the world? Social media, again, back to this. We know women love to share and they love to be part of trusting communities. A woman in New York I met with last year, she said that she was involved in an internet community of 300 smart female investors. They'd never met each other, they're all over the place. But there was a high level of trust and openness in that community, and they talked about their investment decisions together. And they invest in shares of companies that they personally buy the most from. And I recently presented in Stockholm at Nordnet Live, and they just launched this website, this platform called Shareville, and you set up your own portfolio using social media, and other people can follow and learn from what you're doing. Now, not everyone's going to want to do that, of course, but it's going to be available for those that do, for those that want to invest in a community type of forum. The other thing is gamification. Very exciting. Last year I met with a company called 3 Coins in Vienna, and they've developed a Facebook game called Cure Runners, and it's an exciting way to teach kids about money and investing. It makes them have little money decisions all along the way throughout the game, and they love it. And their next project is going to look at Facebook games to teach women about investing as well. And then here's an ad I saw just the other day. You may have seen this, a new Amex card coming out. It used to be that Amex cards were for big business travelers with huge expense accounts and all of this. Well, Amex is not stupid. They've just put out a card designed for your everyday. What kind of language does that appeal to? This is totally aligned with my research findings. Women want to invest in causes and concerns that matter to them. What if you could track your own day-to-day spending habits? You'll have an even better idea of what matters to you in your life. So, last slide here. What about if when you go shopping, you also go shopping for stocks? One startup I know is about to launch in the spring. They're using data analytics that will give people the tools to buy shares in the companies that they buy the most from. Amazing idea. This way, when you're shopping, women can build your investment expertise, and you can also become more conscious and more loyal consumers. Okay, I'm done pretty much. Thank you to NASDAQ for the opportunity to present today, and to this very attentive audience, and very interested audience, I can tell. Thank you. Please connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. I write on this topic passionately. I have 2 different columns that I write in Canada. So I have something coming out usually every week or 2. And if you're interested in following some of these trends in the future of women in investing, just connect with me and you'll see me posting those things. And whatever happens, please don't forget that women are risk aware. They are not risk averse. Thank you.
Thank you. We can take a seat. Yes, thank you very much for that, Barbara, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming, and those of you watching online. We will be joined by the panel here just in a few seconds. Now, as Kristín said, my name is Björn Berg. At least I still believe it is. I'm a director at VÍB Wealth Management. There was a very nice interview with Barbara in Fréttablaðið, the biggest local newspaper, in which this meeting was, for example, mentioned. And I was giving it the name Björn Berg Gunnarsson, which is although a very nice name, is a female name in Iceland. So being one of the girls, this is maybe a little bit taking it too far. But a very enlightening talk, and as Kristín said before, this has been an ongoing project now for VÍB, NASDAQ, the Icelandic Stock Exchange, Naskar Investments, and the Association of Businesswomen in Iceland now for about a year, in which we have tried to increase awareness about investments. And your point about the assumed differences between how men and women invest, because I think the consensus or the belief of a lot of people is that it's not only a question of how they phrase their own investments and their experiences, but also about how they invest themselves. And I know that Kolbrún has done a short survey of investment funds, for example. We know that the biggest fixed income fund in Iceland is managed by 2 women, but when you go to investment funds, the story is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So Kolbrún, what is your experience in checking out those investment funds?
Oh, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, Barbara, for sharing your research and your work with us today. Yes, I was inspired, but when I read your paper, I thought about, what about my business environment? How is it in the investment funds in Iceland? I did a little informal research, yes. I want to share this with you. This was just some research of what we could see today. We have several investment funds in Iceland. 2 of them are run by women, and the other ones are run by male or men. And I was a little bit curious to know, to try to think about, could we find some correlation between whether the fund manager was a male or female? And I look at few parameters in my research. Of course, the gender and the size of the fund. Are these fund managers investing in one sector rather than another? And yes, I find I sort of calculated some correlation. I was rather proud of that I could find some correlation between the gender, and I want to share with you. I sort of took all the investment funds. You know the name of them Kjölfesta, which I'm the fund manager of Kjölfesta, Auður and Edda fund, the ISB Íslandsbanki fund, Ströymur and etc. I tried to sort of look at the portfolio as well, in what kind of investment and what kind of a company they were investing in. And as I said before, these funds are run mostly by men. But if we take a look at the portfolio and sort of the manager of each company within the portfolio, then I found out this correlation between the female fund manager were more likely to invest in a company run by run by women. And it was rather high correlation. Now it's, as the status is today, I think it's 70% more likely that we can see in their portfolio a company run by a female rather than a man. So furthermore, I found out that the fund run by male were larger, sort of the purchasing power for each and every fund run by male. They sort of have a larger fund than the fund run by women.
Yes.
So I would sort of, having said this, is this something that harmonizes with your research? Have you seen that the men today their purchasing power are larger than women? Would you say that?
I actually haven't done any research on that, so I've got to be upfront. My research is so specific in the area of particularly women and the one question I ask every year. But I love that you're doing this research also in your spare time. Yeah. And that's very interesting. And what a great topic to do further research on, either yourself or somebody else. It's not my topic this year, but I think that's fascinating. And especially that whole area of female hedge fund managers. I'm sure you've seen a lot of articles recently how the performance apparently is better for the female hedge fund managers than men. We wonder, because that could be a selection bias, that there are so few women that have gone into the whole industry becoming a hedge fund. Maybe they're just the most brilliant women in the world that are there in the first place. But it's interesting. I don't know if it's a trend or what, but it certainly warrants more research because it's a positive story. So I'm all about perpetuating positive stories.
Yes. A little bit further regarding this discussion and the difference between men and women and how they invest. I'm interested in what you mentioned regarding your clients as well, because you have been talking to those that you describe as smart women, or those who are maybe very successful, or spoken to in that manner. But how about your average investor or your client? I know that you handle people with over $1 million, but yes, which maybe in Iceland would not be phrased as the ordinary investor. But do those people generally approach you very differently, or do you, or does it only assume then to those smart women that you interviewed?
That's a very good question, because yes, I have my practical life and then my research, and you'd think they should correspond, but that's probably why it's most interesting. In my day-to-day practice as a portfolio manager, and I would argue it really doesn't matter whether you have 1 million or 100,000. I think that's just a number. You're still investing, and if you look at people, whether they're men or women, it comes down to more so personality than it would about gender as far as investing. And let me be clear that I know there's all that research about what smart women want to do, and we have yet to allow them some certain linking those opportunities, which is coming in the future. But in today's world, if you look at people's investing portfolios and what's available to them in terms of mutual funds or equities or fixed income or whatever it is, if I look at one of my male clients' portfolios or my female clients, I will find that they are almost identical. So we may talk differently about how we want to invest. We may think differently about how we're coming up with those decisions. But if you look at the investment portfolio itself amongst my client base, you would see it doesn't matter whether they're men or women. The investment portfolio looks pretty much the same. Yes. That's today. This may change if, as this research has shown, if we see that there are going to be more options available for women. We'll see if those portfolios end up looking the same. Let's ask the same question 10 years from now or 5 years from now.
I thought this was very interesting when I read that in the paper, that you think that from your point of view that the male and female are the same investors when it comes, their portfolio. And we did a very informal research on our private banking customers. And the outcome is that 50% of our female customers have chosen to be in the lowest risk category in their investment, the investment policy that has the lowest risk. And if you look at the other categories, that they are usually double ratio of men in each category than women. So that is what we see from our portfolfolio.
Interesting.
Yeah, and of course, so they are risk aware, as you said.
Thank you.
And of course they are, as you also mentioned, they live forever, so they need to be careful.
Huge.
Yep.
Exactly. I'd like to remind you, the audience here in the room, that you can get the attention of the people here on either side of the room with the microphones, and you can participate in our discussion here by getting them to wave the microphone so that I can see them through the lights if you have any questions, as well as on Twitter. And we have had some questions both on Twitter with the hashtag rich thinking and also at fundarstjóri@vib.is on email. We have a question here from Rúna Magnúsdóttir, who says, a very good question, a relevant question. What is stopping the financial market today from communicating investments in a feminine way, or in the way that applies to
I don't know. I think you should answer that question.
Maybe. That might also be a question to Páll, who is the CEO of the stock exchange.
Yeah.
Well, frankly speaking, I don't have a clue what is stopping it, because I'm of the opinion that in a sense the differences between the genders are exaggerated in terms of what they need. As Barbara has been saying, women express themselves differently, but deep down, I think most men have the same need for advice and hand-holding as women do. So, for example, the survey that Kristín referred to in her opening speech said that 17% of men intended to invest in the stock market in the coming 12 months, 4% of women. It still leaves 83% of men who are not going to do anything. And I imagine their needs are pretty much the same as the 96% of the women who are in the same shoes, more or less. So I think so for me, from a male perspective, I think, like many projects that are maybe initially directed at women, basically this is going to benefit everyone. Men may not express these needs in the same way as women. They may be more shy about it, but I think ultimately we need some different way of presenting the financial market to educate and empower. And I think that's one of the great things that I think is going to come out of this.
Now, Lóa, I'd like to ask you, as both an investor yourself in a large company and as well as the chairman of Naskar Investments, an investment company run by women, I found it very interesting that there seems to be all the research we read, and as well as Barbara said, there always seems to be a difference in the households themselves, that women seem to have the wallet and run the day-to-day finances, but then there's a kind of a cutoff when it comes to larger investments. And that is something that's always, I've always wondered why that could possibly be, because I don't see the reason for a difference between purchasing a large plasma TV or purchasing a stock for the future. So can you maybe, because for example, in your experience in Naskar Investments, those are exclusively women who are investing in the stock market. Has this been addressed in your group, or do you feel this as a hindrance in any way?
Well, first of all, thank you, Barbara, and thank you all for coming. We're thrilled to see so many people here. And thank you for giving me the confidence. I'm a smart woman in investment now, I know that. Naskar, let me give you a little background. Naskar Investment is a EHF. It's a company owned by 10 Icelandic women, entrepreneurs and businesswomen. We formed that group in 2008. A little bit after the hype, or in the middle of the hype, we said to ourselves, we want to participate and know how investment works. We were all business leaders, we were business owners, and somebody else were taking responsibility for our portfolios. But we decided, okay, now we want to do it ourselves. So we took part of our investment and we formed this group, and we decided, okay, we want to do this ourselves the hard way. So we are our own portfolio managers, if that's the word in English. we took a long time to give birth to this company of ours, because we went through every discussion of what are our values, what are we going to invest in, and how do we want to do this. We did a lot of studying as well, and we came up with how we wanted to do this. And that's not to say that it has been like that since 2008. Believe me, it hasn't, because we've gone up the mountain and down the valley and swam the river over the valley again to get up to the next mountain. So we took a lot of turns and ups and downs, but we always were true to our core. And that is a little bit, I'm reflecting a lot to what you're saying, because at the end of the day, when we were closed in with the currency restriction, because our goal from the beginning was to be investors on the world market. We were never going to be only in Iceland. So we were never going to be there. So we decided, okay, we opened a bank account to be able to be on the New York Stock Exchange. Of course, you know how our life is. Now we have the Icelandic Stock Exchange. But we went through a lot of discussions, and I don't even have the clue how you say this in English, so I'm going to say this in Icelandic. These are technical words. Við fórum í gegnum allskyns kynningar á hvað eru afleiðu viðskipti og framviðskipti, samvingar og annað slíkt. Anyway, I'll tell her during lunch. I can't wait. But we realized during these discussions that we thought, no. We want to do what we understand. And we've been true to that. And I totally agree that we might come to the task in a different way, but at the end of the day, we come to more or less the same conclusion as everybody else.
But where's the balance between investing in the areas that you are very familiar with, which is very smart and has been advised, and then the necessary diversification of a portfolio?
That's one of our strategy that we made in the beginning, that we decided, okay, we are going to have an investment strategy that balance the risk and also has a diversity and where we go. So today, in the situation where we are both on the stock market, but we're also investing in
fixed income bonds?
No, I'm looking for the nýsköpun? Startups, yeah, thank you. So we are, that more or less our diversity. We're not yet in real estate or anything like that, but we are learning and we are growing and we are keeping true to our core and our value, and we've learned that is very important to us.
Yes.
I think that's important, though, what you asked about, because I worry sometimes when I talk about investing in your passion and all of this. And the only fear I have is that people would take all of their $1 million or whatever it is and put it in this passion. That's not at all what I'm advocating as a portfolio manager. This is about getting started. So when I did the research, I was asking the question, how did you get started investing? And getting started is just taking a small amount of your money and practicing. So just buying a stock. And if you're going to buy a stock, you may as well buy one that interests you or one that you understand very well. And that way you'll be fascinated following it and then working through that. Buying a stock, selling a stock, and like riding a bike, over time you get more and more used to it and you might add to this. I think very few people would have an entire portfolio all of various passion investments, and I don't know how well that portfolio would perform over time. So to be clear, it's something that is of interest to women, and it's something that will move us in the direction of investing, but proper portfolio management has to come into play as well with serious money, let's say.
Yes. Now we have a question brought to us from Margaret, who sent us an email at fundarstjóri@vib.is. She says, women tend to aim for perfection in investments, and can that be an obstacle? How can you give women advice regarding that?
Yes, that theme of perfectionism runs deep, let me say. Through all the years that I've been doing this, I've realized clearly, and maybe it's just that I'm talking to this sort of one level of more or less highly educated women, but it's perfectionism, and it's the enemy when it comes to investing in the stock market, because so many women say to me, yeah, I really need to learn more, all of that, but I want to know absolutely everything. I want full information on this investment, and I want to analyze the heck out of everything before I would do it. That's why I'm not doing it. And then you think about that, but they're sitting on the sidelines doing nothing. So they think that they have to spend all their time being perfect at this. Well, trust me, I'm working my own job plus doing this. I am not perfect at either of them, but I'm doing it because I know I have to. You got to do something and move forward, take action. So that's a big thing that I'm trying to encourage women not to look at it as being perfect at it because that's holding us back, and really just getting started one way or the other, either getting interested enough to learn it yourself or being true to yourself and saying, I'm not interested and I'm going to hire somebody to do it for me, but I'm going to move my money forward in the right direction, one way or another, manage it.
If we bring this discussion a little bit to Iceland as well, and the diversity of the market, this project that has been ongoing now for about a year, we raised the question why it's beneficial not only for women to increase their investments or to participate in investments and diversify their portfolios and holdings, but also for the market itself. And that's a question I would like to ask Páll to answer. As the CEO of the stock exchange, why does the stock exchange need both views, so to speak? And also, maybe a part of that question is we are always then assuming that men and women approach investments differently when we are calling for both voices or both approaches.
Yes, I think diversity is very, very important for the market. I think Barbara really hit the main points in her address is that, first of all, once you get the greater representation of women as investors, they're likely to influence how companies are run, but another important point is also about the resilience of the market. We have an opportunity, if you can say so, when a market collapses, it's not something you like to happen, but at the same time, it does bring benefits in that you question everything. You question how things are done, and maybe, in my view, the thing is, you get an opportunity to do things as you would like them to be done from scratch. And one of the things we looked at, of course, was this lack of interest by women in investing. And I mean, I look over this room here and I see, and imagine we reverse the gender ratio here. So for every woman in here, we have a man. So that's pretty much everybody, apart from a few people. And this, you know, if that was more or less the gender representation on boards of Icelandic listed companies prior to the crash, and it was the reverse ratio to the total reversal of the room we have here. And the market was in many ways, both in terms of listed companies, in terms of investors, in terms of decision makers, characterized by lack of diversity. And we thought if we want to build a more resilient market that is going to serve Iceland into the future, we need to change that. And I think, Björn, you bring up an important point as well. We assume men and women are different. My view is, yes, to a certain extent, but this project, hopefully, eventually will also bring those men to the market who for the same reasons women have not been as interested as maybe we would like them to be, have the same reason for not coming to the market. So I think we want diversity, and I think I would echo Barbara's points here from her address. I think she hits the important points there.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, I would also like to add on this because, as I said prior to this, the fund manager were more likely, if there is a female, we're more likely to see the set of company run by women. And then we sort of, if I look at the portfolio which were the fund manager was a male one, believe it, the manager of the company within the portfolio were 100% male. That is the status today. So I did this exercise all in Excel, you know, and it was not a mismatch anyway. So,
yeah.
We got a question on Twitter from Ingibjörg Greta, who asks if there has been any, if we have perceived any trends in women investing. In Iceland, we have seen, as Kristín said, maybe not in investments themselves very much, but in their own perceived knowledge or increased knowledge between the years. So we hope that all the meetings we have provided, all the free education we have provided, have increased at least the knowledge of how the first steps work. But have you perceived any differences? You talked about the next 10 years maybe. Are we in a much better place than we were 10 years ago? Is this moving much too slowly? Are we only getting a certain part of women investing well, or are we getting the whole? Is the whole boat going out? Or?
I have to be frank, because I haven't been doing those traditional surveys. And as I started at the outset, there's a reason I haven't done those traditional surveys, because often I think they ask the wrong questions. Yeah. And if we're going to keep asking women, are you confident, you're going to probably keep getting the same answer, which is why maybe we've perpetuated these negative messages for the last centuries. So we've got to change the questions. We've got to look at behaviors. And that's what I'm trying to do. So have I seen any trends? I would say when I read now, 4 years after I started reading all of those negative things, yeah, I've seen a little bit of more positive information. I don't know why that is. Maybe the topic is becoming more relevant. Maybe the market, the grand market, is seeing it as a bigger opportunity now. There's just a ton of momentum about women in general, whether it's women in investing or women in anything. It's a topic right now. There's a reason why I'm being asked to speak more too, because of that. So I have to say that's encouraging. Whether there's an actual trend in the underlying how many people are investing, I don't know. I would want to look at that, and I don't have that information.
I think, like you say, that this is going slowly, like most development when it comes to women. And I would really like to see it move faster. But I think, for example, the education that we have been investing in, for example, just VÍB with the stock exchange, what we have been doing, and we saw from the numbers from Kristín earlier that there is more interest. So we just need to start from somewhere. And I think what you mentioned before, the role models, and that they will you know, teach women how to start and so on. For example, at the bank, half of the advisors are women. And it has been so for quite a while. So of course we should have seen this development going faster. But for example, I did last night I did Google investment and women, and the only thing that came up was investment and women clothing. That was the only thing that came up.
There you go. There you go. We were doing that.
We have a question here from the room. Hulda.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Hulda from FKA. Thank you, Barbara, so much. I would love to see shoes and funds, you know, shoes and bags, funds, etc., etc. So I think the market is extremely immature. But having the fact that women are big shoppers, big spenders, and that we have 5 males, or I haven't counted exactly, but the fact that males are not attending, I'm so curious to hear your opinion on it. You know, should when you are speaking at more mature markets, are males showing up or not?
Oh God, what a great question.
Yeah, and then one more question. It's about if we are not yet a potential exciting group, actually, women.
Sorry?
If women are not yet an exciting potential customer, you know, in the financial market.
Are you kidding? Yeah, this is the untapped market, right? This is the most exciting potential customer. This is where everyone should be focused, obviously. But it's a great question. I think with any event, it's how it's positioned, right? So I don't know how this event was positioned or other events, but depending on where I'm speaking, there can be lots of men or very few men. And I think the topic might naturally appeal to women, and a lot of places assume that it is just for women because maybe that's how women want to talk in a group or something like that. So it's about setting the expectations of what's about to happen and why. I have spoken at banks where There were wealth managers, so they had a great interest in learning how to tap into a female client base. And that room was more men than women. And they were fascinated and wanted to understand their private clients better. So I think there's no reason, and I've never met men that are against this for any reason. And I think, as Paul pointed out, probably the secret maybe is that men actually would prefer to learn through stories as well. Maybe they don't want to read those boring analyst reports either. And if we changed them and made them more interesting, it would be more interesting to men and women. And I think that, you know, we're doing a great service for both sexes by talking about this. The other group that follows closely with women when you read about is the millennials, or the next generation, the sort of maybe softer, more sensitive males who are more value focused, this upcoming generation. They will probably change this very quickly as well, because they seem to want the same things as women do from what I've been reading. So who knows? I mean, again, this isn't just about men, women, and investing. It's about men, women, and everything. So I certainly don't have all the answers, but I think that whatever we do for women in investing will be also positive for men in investing.
Yeah, I can comment on that on behalf of us holding this meeting and our educational program that we have been having. That we have marked a huge difference in the group that has been attending. Women are attending far better than they were, both as a percentage, and also the whole group has been attending much more. So we are getting much more people attending our seminars and meetings and courses, and a large portion of those are women. So this making education free, accessible, and fun and short seems to apply to both sexes, and we have tried to refrain from having courses specifically focused on women or on men. But one thing we have been assuming the whole time is that this is necessary, that it is beneficial for women to participate in the securities markets and investments. What are your, if I put that to the panel, do you believe that it is necessary? Why can't women just keep their money on the bank accounts and get a small interest there? Why is it beneficial for them to invest?
Can
yes,
I jump
Loa.
into this?
Yes.
I think it's extremely important that women participate in investing, being part of the decision making, but also being part of the discussion about financial matters and investments. And part of that is also to take us a little bit back to the ethics and to the discussion of trusting the market again. And we've been talking about increasing the numbers of women on boards. And I totally agree with you that we also, by increasing ourselves as shareholders, we have this phrase in Icelandic called "konur fara fyrir fé," which means women lead the money, their own money. They don't let anybody else do it. And I think it's really important that we take that torch and we go ahead and we be part of that discussion as well. And because overall, because investment in a stock market, you're investing in companies. You're investing in companies like, if we do this internationally, like Nike or Gap that you refer to. And those companies, they are doing everyday business, and they have a story, and they have their products or their line of businesses. And we want to be part of that world, but also be part of that being part of holding the boards responsible for good ethics and good procedures. And I think women can do a lot there, and they should definitely be at that table.
But for their personal finances as well, do you think it's important that they invest their money and...
Definitely. Yeah. That's a criteria that I think is giving. Yeah. Here is me, myself, I, and of course I'm the leader of my own money.
Yes. Birna, you are the CEO of a large bank in the Icelandic perspective. Mm-hmm. Do you look at women as an untapped market?
I think so, and also the thing that was mentioned before, that I think companies, they are speaking to investors, especially companies that are on the market, they are speaking to investors. I don't think they are very much speaking to women as investors. And there are many good examples of that. I remember one, for example, good story of mother care in the UK that has no woman on board. And can you imagine them being very interesting investment opportunity? Of course they are not. So I think the companies that are on the market can do more to make women more interested in investing in their company. And I think you're right about the reports that they are doing, the investment reports. When I get visits from analysts, they are only talking about numbers. They don't ask about culture, the service, the clients, and so on. Very seldom that you get that question. And I think that is factors that women would be more interested in knowing about, and they take more seriously as a success of the business they are in.
And would we then assume that if women participate more in the Icelandic stock market, that this will be the case in a few years? That presentations and that the analysts themselves and that the banks and the ones discussing finance will need to adapt to a different phrasing of things?
Yeah, I think so also because most family investment portfolio is in many cases run by the men in the household, but more and more so that we see that the women and the wives are with them when they are taking the decisions. And I think what they should be doing more of is to have also their own portfolio, to practice to invest and do it on their own terms. And I see that many women are starting to do so. They would like to have their own fund to manage, to try start small and then see how it goes.
I think in a way we are also we have an interesting experiment going here in relation to this topic and in relation to what you mentioned, Barbara, in your talk, is that you want to make it normal that women invest, and how do you do that? And making it normal, you empower women, and you see greater women representation in addition among decision makers. Here in Iceland, we have decided we want gender equality on boards. So we have implemented a law which stipulates that no less than 40% of the board should be women or men. So the gender inequality should never be more than 60-40 either way. And I honestly think that this is going to bring more diversity to the investor group as well. So in a sense, the causality, I think, is going to lead in that direction as well. And I'm very hopeful that is going to help us, because that is going to influence how companies speak to their investors, and that again is going to influence how investors perceive these companies. I think are going to bring different types of investors to the scene.
I want to remind you here in the Harpa hall today that you can grab the attention of the people on either side of the rooms with the microphones and ask us questions if you wish. Regarding investments then and different types of investments, we are talking about stocks mainly, but are there any differences, and do you perceive a difference in whether women or men approach are more likely to invest, for example, in derivatives or fixed income bonds, or in currency, or in short selling, or stocks? In Bitcoin, yes.
I think this is
also, is that maybe a part of the problem? If we want the whole public to invest, some types of investments and some types of reading about price-earning ratios and so forth, maybe it isn't going to be interesting to a whole lot of people. Maybe the people who are willing to accept that as an interesting number are already interested, and so that we need to create other products or more accessible products. Do you, for example, believe that women will more like as their investments increase, that they will be more likely to invest in bonds or in mutual funds or in stocks? Or
I think it's across the board. I think as long as they find it interesting and we communicate in their language, there's no reason why they won't invest in anything. I jokingly said Bitcoin because I don't think when we talk about women investing in causes or concerns that matter to them, Bitcoin's kind of been proven to be about money laundering and drugs and all of these horrible things. I don't think any woman would want any part of that. So I think that's more of a kind of a gambling thing, and it's different than investing, right? But there's no reason why any asset class wouldn't get more investment if we communicated and made it interesting to the buyer, if you will. Whether that's, as you said, the men that aren't currently investing or the women that aren't currently investing.
Do you believe that investments and stock purchases are thought of as gambling?
I would not say stock, though, but if we, for example, if you look at the customer base that you would put under the category of in Icelandic spákaupmenn, I doubt that we have any woman in that category.
Yeah, speculative investors.
Yes. I think there's none there.
Yeah, think
so that is also what I'm saying about the risk awareness. I think it is completely different.
Yeah, do too.
Okay. Now, if we think about the Icelandic stock market, it's maybe a little bit difficult for you, Barbara, to participate. But about the trend that we've been seeing now in the stock market, with companies being listed now that are paying out dividends, we are getting a much broader stem, if you could phrase it like that, or we used to have companies here in the Crest that were almost solely in the financial business. Now we are getting a fisheries company coming into the main market. In next week we are going to list an insurance company. Is there a desirable development of a market that would then approach or apply to women better, or get them better to invest for, and then I'm talking about the types of companies that need to be listed?
I think it's common sense. I'd welcome the input from the people in Iceland, but to me it's common sense that the more opportunity available in diverse companies, the more, again, interesting it will be to women.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if those are companies that are growing very fast, if you get very young companies. That's a problem that we have had, and Páll has addressed also, that we are almost only getting established and large companies listed. We have two stock exchanges here, one which is the main market in the stock exchange, and then also a First North market, which has not grown and is now losing one of its biggest company. Páll, you can maybe address that, if that is a part of the market, the First North market, that needs to grow to apply to a bigger audience.
I think so. I think that's going to be a big part of that story. And I think, for example, and I think there is a great potential to be unleashed. And to be fair, you know, women participated to a significant extent in the stock market in the early years of the century. For example, in 2007, there were 6 companies listed with more than 5,000 female investors each. Now, if you add up all female investors in all listed companies, there are about 5,000, and there is double counting in that. So I think there is a huge potential to be unleashed, and I think it's possible that those investors that we have not yet, that are not yet in the market, are precisely those investors that will be looking towards innovation, smaller companies, all different, you know, different meaning to investments. They need something different than what is available now, or they need that as well. And so I have high hopes that bringing those investors into the market is going to help, you know, innovation and our First North alternative market grow.
So a critical part of increasing investments is getting more companies listed then, instead of having unlisted companies, so that more people can approach them. Mm-hmm. Regarding the diversification aspect as well, and the scientific method, if you could phrase it like that, the way of approaching investments. You talk about stories and the experience of others, and it has also been maybe used as an example of how not to do business, to base your investments on the experience that has already taken place by somebody else. This is the Icelandic example of hearing something in the hot tub, in the swimming pool, of listening to your cab driver tell you about something, of the old story about, wasn't it the old Kennedy who heard his shoe polisher tell him about some opportunity, so he went straight and liquidated all his stocks. Isn't that something that people have to be very aware of, what kind of stories they are hearing? Because if you're hearing stories in the form of advice from people who know what they are talking about, who are experienced in investing, that's a little bit different than basing your investments on something that's already happened, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's key that the women that I talk to that are contributing to this research are smart women who have already become very, very successful. So that's why I wanted their message, because obviously whatever message they listened to from their role model, that message worked. So that's why I'm sharing those messages. I didn't do, not any disregard to taxi drivers, but I didn't do a research report on advice from taxi drivers, which would be very interesting, I'm sure. So yeah, you have to be careful, where's that message coming from? And I think as smart women and men, we have to take personal responsibility. And as investors, ultimately, we have to take personal responsibility and use our own intuition as where's this advice coming from, and do a bit of your own research along with it, of course.
But when I'm talking about role models, I'm not talking about directly, advice of this and this investment. I'm more talking about how they started, how they, what made them interested in this. Because I'm absolutely sure that when women start doing this, more women start doing this, they will find it very exciting. Yes. And they, it is extremely exciting to buy new shoes. They will find this also exciting after a while. They will learn how to.
Well, I'd like to know, how did you get started? This is all I've ever done is ask people like this.
Because of my job, I can. It's a very limited I can do, but I can still buy shoes. But I just want to ask you, Barbara, in your research, did you see? Did they mention any specific, was it anything that was the main obstacle, of starting to invest or?
I'm so glad you asked that, because when I started the question, how did you get started investing? I also said, did you have to overcome any fears? And I ended up losing that part of the question completely. And again, I don't know if it was just the women I was talking to, but they're diverse from different countries, different ages, different professions all around the world. Again, these are the people that have figured it out. They didn't seem to focus on fears or overcoming something. They were just focused on, here's what my grandfather told me to do, I'm doing it, and it's working, and now I'm, in one case, the CEO of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. When she was 9, her grandfather said, you're really smart. You can do whatever you want. Sounds so ridiculously simple, but she took that message, and he bothered to give her the message, which I think is the great part. So I always tell people, take the time to give somebody else a message, because you don't know how much of a huge effect it's going to have on their life. So I'm sure lots of people have fears and things they have to overcome. That's human nature. But it's the ones that don't focus on the fears that are the ones that end up getting ahead. I mean, I used to be terrified of wearing a dress like this, because I grew up in the Bay Street in Canada's Wall Street, and every woman would wear a blue suit, right, with a little bow tie or something. And I did that for years in my career. And then finally, when I became more confident and I had revenues and the company knew I could make money, I started wearing dresses and what I wanted to wear. And now I wear dresses, and talking about make it normal. It's normal for me now to wear a dress, and it's normal for any woman, I think, in the business arena to wear a dress if they feel like it.
Yeah. We have a question here in the audience.
Okay, hello. Thank you very much for this. Barbara, I want to ask you, Birna told us that the majority of women investors they choose fixed income, almost only fixed income. And I think this is the experience in all asset management companies in Iceland. And what I want to ask you, could it be that we are asking wrong questions? When you come with your portfolio to a new company, and you can choose between 5 or 4, it differs a little bit. only fixed income, and 30% equities and so on. Could it be that we should ask, do you want to buy in good, healthy Icelandic companies? Half of it and half of it fixed income. And if we change the question, then women in Iceland would invest differently.
I think 100%. I've talked to, I am a financial advisor, so I don't want to give you my opinion again, because that's not what I'm here to do. But I spoke to one of the top financial advisors in Brussels last year as part of this research. And she said the reason she's been so successful as an advisor with both male and female clients is A, she doesn't make it complicated, the conversation, and B, she tries to frame the conversation so that they understand where they're headed. And the actual, whether it's fixed income or equities, that's a really dangerous area, especially now, with fixed income having been traditionally considered to be low risk. Well, in fact, it's flipped. And a lot of people are still positioning it that way, which is, another danger. But that conversation, to your point, and the questions are critical. And the success of that advisor will depend on that, I think.
Now, Barbara, you have traveled extensively around the world discussing this topic with women. Do you, sometimes you go again to the same countries, you've been to Sweden a few times, for example. Do you feel there's a difference between the countries in the way the smart women in those particular countries invest?
That's been probably the most surprising thing to me, is being everywhere and asking one question that makes it easier. And it doesn't seem to matter. There seems to be, and again, this could be because these are educated women, I don't know. But whatever the commonality is, doesn't matter whether a ballet dancer or a fund manager. I'm talking to all kinds of different professions. I've been able to come up with these common themes in the research reports because they are common. And I would certainly have pointed out if there was one country or type of woman that did something incredibly differently, but that has not been the case. So I encourage you all to read the research and to read the quotes, because you'll be amazed. They have different personalities and different ways that they learned about money, but the themes are there because they are themes like be independent, etc., etc.
Yes. Now, we are getting close to the end of our meeting. I'd like to ask you about how we increase the knowledge of women about investments and which are the best ways, because not everybody has access to people who can give them advice. The common theme of the women you interviewed is that they had a role model and somebody maybe helped them along the way or planted a seed to begin with interest. How do you think it's important for people to have better access to the education system, to have a wider variety of courses online? Do we need to approach women separately with education like this, or do we need to change the phrasing and the approach as a whole? Which do you? I'm asking for advice here for us Icelanders if we want to increase.
I will defer to the knowledge of the women that I interviewed, and that question is answered brilliantly in the research study that I just posted on my website, barbarastewart.ca. The research report is called Getting Started. The 4th section is called Practical Advice. And your question will be answered brilliantly through the quotes of these women, because that's what they're doing. They're talking about how did they learn. A lot of them it was different courses, different things. One person talked about how they started reading one article a day in the business section of the newspaper. And just one article a day, if you commit to it and you try to understand it, she found that after a year or two, she actually was really interested and started reading more than one article a day in the business section. But if you read the practical advice section, you will get the answer to that question better than any answer I could give. These women have been so generous sharing this, and it's vital information, and now it's captured in a document, so it's great.
I think those are very fitting and good last words for a meeting. I'd like to thank Kristín, Páll, Kolbrún, Lóa, Birna, and of course Barbara, our keynote speaker here tonight, and you, or this morning, and you, the audience, and those of you at home watching. I'm saying tonight for those who are going to watch the tape tonight online. But the recording of this meeting will be, of course, on the websites of VÍB, Íslandsbanki, and the stock exchange, NASDAQ OMX Iceland. So thank you very much for attending today. Have a nice day.